Are you all set? You good to go?
Thank you for asking.
All right, then, good morning, everybody. My name is Alan Barnard. I'm the chair of the Opportunity Fund Board. The board members here will have a roll call shortly where you'll find out the areas that each member represents. I represent District 2. Welcome, everyone. We appreciate it. A couple of things before we get any further into this. First of all, may I ask that you all either turn your cell phones off or put them on vibrate, and kindly ask that any of the board members, we don't take any calls during the conduct of this so that we don't miss anything. So if you would do that, I'd appreciate it. All right, secondly, because I'm hard of hearing and others of you might be hard of hearing, for the board members and for you, the public, you will have a time to speak later on if you have something you'd like to say. And the board members will be asking questions. If you would all kindly project to the last person in the room so that everybody in here hears all the comments. Our back is turned for 3 of you here, so kindly when you make your comments, turn sideways and project so that everybody in the far end of the room will hear your comments and questions. Fair enough? All right, thank you so much. We'll proceed at this point and ask Bill Greenwood to perform the roll call, please.
Right, I'd like to ask each member, starting with Sharon, to announce who they are and who they represent.
I'm Sharon Delabar. I represent the city of Sequim.
Dan Lynon, City of Forks.
Joe Murray, Clallam County District 3.
And Orville Campbell will represent the city of Port Angeles.
Bill Herman, Port of Port Angeles.
And you know me. All right, thank you, Bill. Appreciate that. Then we have a quorum, so we're clear to move ahead. We need to do a little administrative thing before we get into the substance here, having to do with the minutes of our last meeting. So the first question I have is, did you all get a copy of the minutes from our last meeting, which was held, when was that? I don't
July
have that.
23rd. July 23rd.
July 23rd. Does everybody have a copy? All right, then I would entertain a motion.
I move that we accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
Second. All right, thank you. Any discussion on the minutes of the previous meeting? And there's a motion on the table that we accept those minutes as submitted. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Minutes of the previous meeting are accepted. All right, at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Bill Greenwood. The Economic Development Corporation has the function of screening applications and providing administrative support. And I'd like to ask Bill to cover those areas that he needs to do before we get into the substance of the application.
Well, I'd first like to go around the table, again starting with Sharon, and make sure you have to announce if you have a conflict of interest on this matter or not.
No conflict.
Dan?
No conflict. No conflict.
Bill?
No conflict. No conflict.
All right, thank you very much. So you all know, under section 5.40.060 of the responsibilities of the Opportunity Fund Board, this is from the county. In order to suitably come before this board, the applicant needs to meet 5 different criteria, and it's the job of our team to review those criteria against the application and to make sure it meets them. Sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. In this case, these are the criteria. Does it promote the ongoing operation of a business? In this instance, we believe it essentially does. Does it promote the expansion of an existing business? So we would say it essentially does. Will it attract new businesses to the county, city? We believe it certainly would. Would it assist in the development of new businesses from within the incorporated and unincorporated areas of Clallam County? We believe that is the case. And would it provide family wage jobs to citizens of the county? And we believe that is the case as well after reviewing the application. So when that occurred, we then submitted it to the Opportunity Fund Board and called for the meeting.
All right, thank you, Bill. Appreciate that. At this time, I will call the public meeting to order and have a couple of initial comments I need to make. First of all, you will be given an opportunity in the public to weigh in on this after a while. If you have a written comment that you'd prefer not to present, but you would like to submit it for the record, then we'd like you to forward that comment up here. I will give them to Jennifer, and when it comes to that time, she could read the comment into the record so that everybody's heard. So if you have anything in writing, you can move it all the way up here and we'll get it to Jennifer. All right, the second thing, we have received a very detailed analysis of the status of the Opportunity Fund. But I asked Jim if he could sort of cut to the chase and outline for us the status of the monies for our purposes of deliberation today. It's one paragraph, so I'm going to read it to you. We have $1 million budgeted for 2016 for undesignated projects, which is where this request, if approved, would be paid out of. As of right now, we have $1,466,135 in cash balance and expect another $950,000 or so to come in next year. Starting in 2017 and for the next 15 years, ending in 2032, the Opportunity Fund will be required to make a payment of approximately $725,000 per year on the loan to build the Carlsberg sewer collection system. And for the next 7 years, $48,194 per year for the loan on the Business Incubator Project. Assuming nothing else changes, we should have about $182,000 per year available to allocate towards new requests, and this is in the future. The point being here that we have approaching $1.5 million in the fund now that is available and could be allocated towards this application if the county deems it appropriate, and if we deem it appropriate to recommend approval of the application. Does that help? Y'all okay with that? All right then. Okay, at this point, I want to go back to Bill to see if there's anything further you wanted to add to the administrative criteria for moving this forward, and if there's any recommendation that you would wish to put on the table at this time.
We don't have anything further to add, and our position at the EDC is to ensure that it's a suitable project to bring before the board to make a decision as to whether it should go before the county commissioners. So but we've reviewed it for against the statutes I mentioned, and feel it should be here today.
All right then. At this point, I'd like to ask Frank Pickering to come forward, and it's time for the presentation to the board. May I remind you again, if you would please speak to the last person in the room so that everybody is aboard.
I have my own hearing aids on too.
There you go.
And I have a hearing problem.
Then you have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much. My name is Frank Pickering, and I am the chair of the SARC, or Clallam County Parks and Recreation District Board, Parks and Recreation District number 1 Board, better known as SARC. And I'd also like to introduce Sherry Nagel, who is our vice chair and will be having part of this presentation. And also Len Borchers, who is the What is your title now, Len? You change it.
Acting Director.
Okay. Of the YMCA, whom we are looking at partnering with in order to bring the facility back online. If I could, Jennifer, is there a way to turn out the forward lights? I hope you can see everything. All right. The first thing is, what is an air handler?
If you stand there, I can't get any of your pictures.
Okay. At some point, I got to repeat my
Okay.
notes too. What is an air handler? That's what this is right here. This is the old one. It's about 20 years old now. You can see a lot of the rust on it and so forth. It is required by the state health code that a natorium have an operating air handler to exhaust the air in the building and keep it a certain level of humidity and other chemicals in there. It does heat the natorium, and this one with propane burners. It does remove contaminants. It recovers heat. It's not like you can open a window in the middle of the winter and expect to ventilate out and keep this going. It does a lot of heat recovery, and that's where a lot of money goes in the cost of these things. And it does provide an efficiency, and that's one of the key things we look at in the cost of the system. Two key components. As you can see, it's quite rusted. These are two propane burners. They provide all the heat for the natorium. They are quite old. If any of you are familiar with gas-fired furnaces, the flue gas goes up through a plenum, and if there's any holes in that, it can be very dangerous. So we're monitoring carbon monoxide with these, and we really need to get this replaced. This is one of the two blowers that either brings in fresh air or removes air from the system. This is one that has had some problems. We have problems with bearings. These run all the time. Problems with belts, etc. It is a maintenance. I won't call it a nightmare, but it does require a fair number of labor hours to keep the current system repaired. I don't show a slide of the computer system. It's still running XT. It has boards in it that we don't want to think about. And it is one of our problem areas right now. It is running. I started it up the other day and ran it for a few minutes. But it is something that is going to go out and will continue to go out. Okay, that's one of the key subjects, the air handler itself. It's all about jobs. When SARC closed, we lost about 70-something jobs in the Sequim area. With the proposal that we are going to be putting forth, in cooperation with the YMCA, we anticipate a payroll recovery about $500,000 a year. We recover approximately 45 to 55 full and part-time jobs. This is going to be key. And a majority of the hires are for part-time youth as lifeguards. At this point, I'd like to ask one of our other members in the audience here, Gail Sutner, to tell us, she's the lady that has run the aquatics for years. Tell us a little bit about our lifeguards and the training that they get, the job training that they get.
And if you would stand, please, appreciate it.
Sure. Let me, do I have to come up there? Can I just-
No, come on up. That's fine.
Frank told me he was inviting me to a very small informal meeting. He didn't say anything about all this. So my name's Gail Sumter. I was the aquatics manager at SARC for about 1.5 to 2 years. As far as the jobs go, I supervised all the lifeguard staff. That included the cashier staff and the supervisor staff. Cashiers and supervisors had to also be lifeguard certified, and that's where we drew our supervisory staff from. They started at age 15, and the majority of them were between 15 and about 19, 20. To be honest with you, unless I had some local moms and people trying to have a part-time job to supplement family income. But for the most part, I told these kids I didn't want them there after 20. I wanted them to go to college and go away and do something else, because it's not a permanent job. But the important thing about this job was it taught them skills in terms of the obvious lifeguarding, first aid, skills that they could take other places. but it also taught them how to have their first job. And a lot of my training for them was training them to have a job. Because when you're 15 and 16 years old and you haven't had a job yet, you need to learn how to interact with your supervisors, interact with other staff, work as a team, and some of the very basic things that you don't think about, like I'd hand them their tax statement at the end of the year and they'd look at me and say, what does this mean? Do I get more money? Do I have to pay this? What are we doing? So I trained them about how to have workplace etiquette and skills. They took those skills and I think they've taken them beyond SARC into their community, beyond SARC in time to their future positions. And I can tell you about one or two that took their skills. One kid did CPR on an airline flight for 45 minutes when somebody passed out and had a heart attack. And I've had them make rescues at the lakes around here as they were guarding outside of SARC. So yeah, it's a huge job incubator, if you will. That's the way I looked at it. So.
Thank you. Some of us call her Mama Gail, but she does the lifeguards do behave. Other local primary jobs, as I call them, there will be jobs for local businesses in construction during the installation of the air handler and the water and waste systems that we are proposing. This will involve concrete work, electrical work, plumbing work, computer controls, cranes, heavy construction, and probably several others that I'm not thinking about. I'm looking at the engineer who knows all this about. But I think key to everything is what I'm calling the secondary job impacts. The fact that this facility doesn't exist now and will hopefully exist in the future. Eric Lewis is a gentleman, I think you may know, he's the CEO of the OMC. He's the one that is trying to keep doctors and medical professionals to come to this area and learn and live and enjoy area. He's been a key part of the team that has put this proposal and this whole project together. And his quote is, the facility will be an attractive resource for much needed recruitment and retention of physicians and other healthcare professionals. I do know that OMC has had a waiting list of up to 1,000 people to be assigned to a doctor, not choosing a doctor. And these younger doctors that they want to recruit are asking for, yes, schools, very, very, very important, but they're also asking for recreational facilities. How do our kids learn to swim? Where can we go for workout, and so forth. And each doctor's office, when they bring in a new doctor, that right in itself is a large payroll. But the doctor has an office staff. These are all very good jobs that they come in with, and they will add to the eastern Clallam County, or as we say, the SARC district. There we go. Hit the wrong button. OMC is a key partner in this endeavor. One of the key partners, along with the City of Sequim, Clallam County, and SARC board itself. OMC will be leasing a significant amount of space from the YMCA and offer a number of jobs. It will increase the number of jobs in the community because of that. They're expanded cardio and pulmonary rehab services. Currently, I believe if you qualify, you can get 3 months of cardiac or pulmonary rehab at OMC here in Port Angeles. It was, for a while, we could get 3 additional months at the SARC facility in partnership with OMC, and they do intend on reinstating that. There will be, the space that they lease will be intensely physical therapy, and physical therapists will be employed, new physical therapists, expanding their physical therapy department. They intend on instituting sports medicine. I know my wife and I go to a doctor, he's going to retire pretty soon, and he's a sports medicine doctor, and it's very useful, especially when you pull your shoulder like I've done swimming now. They also intend on doing chronic disease management. That's in part of the philosophy that OMC has right now, which is to we need to encourage people. We can't mandate anything, but we need to encourage people to a better lifestyle. Exercise. Reduce your blood pressure, not necessarily with drugs, but through exercise and so forth. Weight control. I know I'm working hard on that one because if I don't get enough swimming in, I'd have a problem with weight control. Thank you, Steve, for keeping the pool at Port Angeles open. And lifestyle changes. These are key, and they intend on having classes and work with that. At the last City of Sequim council meeting, the City Council of Sequim voted unanimously to endorse this request that we are presenting to you today, as shown here. We'll get to the number in a little while. Plus, they also voted for a $30,000 a year commitment for a 3-year time for Charlie Bush to sign a contract with the YMCA as a contribution for low-income support and people to come in. This will also, the Y will be employing people for instructors and so forth like that will be a part of this. We are grateful for particularly the new city manager, Charlie, Joe, and Candace have actually showed up at SARC board meeting. We've never seen that before. There's a team cooperative effort going on here to keep this, to get this facility back in operation. Sequim has a plan, and I may misname this, Joe. You can correct me if you would. Sequim 120 identifies an increase of about 3,500 residents over 20 years. This is an economic driver. To think about how many jobs that they do that come with that. And clearly, quote from Joe Irving, clearly having parks and recreation facilities such as the Sequim YMCA at SARC are key to implementing the city's desire to highlight the quality of life and help to attract new businesses as well as new residents. My wife and I are members of the Clallam County Newcomers Club. Not that we're newcomers, we've been here 6 years, but that's newcomers, I think, sometimes. But every time we go to a meeting or a party or any of the things that, like a couple nights ago at the French restaurant, people come up to us, when is SARC going to be back open? We moved here. One of our key decisions in moving here was that we had an exercise facility such as SARC. So not only climate, the outdoors, some of us really like the outdoors, the cost of living here. It's not sunshiny out there today, and we'll just ignore that for now. A friend of ours is a realtor. Heidi is a past president of the Sequim Association of Realtors. By the way, Gail is also a realtor. When meeting clients from out of the city who are thinking of relocating to Sequim, one of the major things they ask is whether there's a community recreation center and a pool. Heidi quotes this: "I used to tour the SARC facility with them to show them what we could offer. SARC was a big asset." Heidi has been working hard to try to get the facility back open. She's mentioned also that that can add as much as 3 to 5% of the price of your home. Obviously, no one can read this at this point. I just wanted to put it up there. It is in your packet. The budget is the key to the thing. The reason we did not come before you much earlier is we did not have a sustainable financial plan. In cooperation with the YMCA, we do have a budget that all of us have looked at. It is in your packet, but I want to address 2 general areas. Revenue, we have the survey that the YMCA, along with OMC, the City of Sequim, Clallam County, and SARC, paid for a $36,000 survey, which gave us the confidence of, number one, that the price that the YMCA thinks it's charging will be paid, and enough people will do that, and to provide the basic operating funds of the facility. It also looks at donations, which would be used for operating facility, part of it, and it looks for capital donations, because there will be additional work beyond what we're asking for today to look at that. At that meeting, I asked the young lady who had done the survey, and they were very they've been doing surveys for many, many years. In fact, Gary Huff, who is here from the Y board, has been working with them for a large number of years. And I asked her, go back 5 years in your mind. You made projections of what some company, a YMCA that they were working with. And you made projections of how much they will be able to get in revenue and donations. Now come back forward to the present. What happened? Did they achieve that amount of donations and funds? And the answer was, if we usually projected 20, we usually got 22, 23. So they try to be conservative on the number of what they project as it. The numbers also look about 80% of coverage of the operating expense by the fees, which is what we've used to in the past. So I think that is also a very sustainable number. Expenses are easier to quantify than sales or revenue, and they've been checked. Steve Burke is here. He's the manager of the William Shore Pool. I asked Steve to take a look at it. And Steve, your comment was?
It's sustainable.
It is sustainable. And I believe they checked with several other YMCA facilities that run pools, and they've all looked at this and said, this is a reasonable pro forma budget. So based on that, we believe that we have presented a sustainable budget. There's other people here. One of the ways we're doing this, how to get this project done properly, is using the Washington State Department of Enterprise Services, and it's the Energy Efficiency Program of publicly owned buildings. There are a number of facilities here in town. Lisa Steele is the representative. Lisa, I think you're going to have to step to the front. I'm just asking you to make a couple of very quick comments about your program and who you're working with here in the area. And I will give you a clue of what we're looking at, which is, as an engineer and who unfortunately got an MBA, I look at a lot of this. When you're going to do a project, you want to make sure you get it done and there are no cost overruns.
So that is one of the things that the program is set up as both for economic development and to save energy. But one of the things that attracts clients to the program is the structure of having this guaranteed maximum project cost. So knowing that when you come to the board to get a project done, that you won't be coming back to the board to get that same project done for more money. So that is part of what the ESCOs that we work with, they're pre-qualified. There's one of the representatives here who's done a pretty good proposal. It's going to get the pool back on track. It looks a lot like what they've done for the William Shore. And they will be guaranteeing the maximum project costs, energy savings, and equipment performance if you decide to go forward. If you have any questions, I'm here to help.
Thanks, Lisa. Okay. Now, in the end, you got to get the work done. We have worked with two different companies. We're now looking at Abacus Resource Management. Paul Ristow is here from Abacus. He's the project development engineer. He and I have been talking together a lot. And the Abacus was the company that did the major work at the William Shore Pool. And Steve, I think you're pretty satisfied right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So one of the things that we want to look at is make sure that we get the job done right. So, Paul, a couple of comments, please.
Okay, well, we do a lot of pool projects in addition to other public and private facilities. Other projects we've done recently are the Julius Bowen Pool renovation in Issaquah, for the city of Issaquah. Another one has been Evergreen Aquatic Center in Burien.
Can't hear you.
Okay, I'll speak up a little more. Apologies. So we do a lot of natatorium and pool projects in addition to other types of facilities. Two recent projects we've done at pools have been the Julius Bowen Pool renovation for the city of Issaquah. That's a whole building renovation project, $5 million bond. Another project I've recently done has been the Evergreen Aquatic Center in Burien. And that was a small privately owned pool. In both cases, we're on track to save the owners about half of from what their previous earlier utility expenditures were. Paul has presented us with 4 different options on this air handler. What we have now, the one you saw rusted, is probably less than level 1 that you proposed. It's inexpensive. In a previous estimate, in a previous incarnation of a proposal we made, we drew back because we couldn't have the sustainable funds. That was a level 1 pool. What we're looking at now is a level 2. It reduces the it provides better computer control, much more efficiency, and rather than using the propane burners in the heating the air, it's using propane boilers, which in turn heat the air in the natomium, a safer system. And as we understand what we're doing, there's also level 3, and Steve, I think you've got about a level 4 type system over there. A lot of heat recovery, a lot of savings, energy savings. The system that Paul is discussing with us would have the space and available so that we can add a level 3 or level 4 and save much further energy. And there are grants available through Lisa Steele and the Department of Commerce for adding things in the future, and grants and partnerships with the state and others to save energy. Thanks, Paul. We did select to work with Abacus, as I said earlier, because of their experience with pool natoriums. The other company had done some, but did not have the extensive experience that Abacus has. Total project cost. The original number, as I said in the project, you probably don't ever see people come in and ask for less money. But the latest estimate that with Paul and others that we've worked with is around $730,000, $735,000. That takes care of the air handler and the water and waste system, hot water that goes into the showers. There is an energy savings expected of around 17, maybe as much as 20,000, perhaps, depending on how we do the system. The project is broken down at the point at which, if a grant is made and we'll get a final proposal. It'll be worked through the state. They'll be part of that proposal, and the guarantees will be in place of cost and savings efficiency, which that number will end up being guaranteed in the end. So that reduces the operating cost for operating the facility, which increases the ability of jobs, them hiring additional people, putting additional programs together, because it's going to cost less to run the facility than it has in the past. The way forward. We must have all of these factors together in order to move forward. If one is out, we have to go back and work our way around. We are asking for a positive recommendation from this committee to the Clallam County Commissioners. We need approval of this grant by the Clallam County Commissioners. I know that we have a letter in your packet from Mark Mazias. He had a meeting at 11. He came in to make comments, but he had a meeting at 11, and so he had to leave. He was going to make some comments, but refer you to the letter in your packet. We need the final approval of the budget by the Olympic Peninsula YMCA Board and the SARC Board of Commissioners, and I think that is something we're working very closely to make it happen right now. And we need approval of a definitive management contract by the Olympic Peninsula YMCA Board and the SARC Board of Commissioners. And that contract is underway. It will be a while yet before, when you get lawyers involved, it takes a while to get that done. All of the supporters of this initiative together, the City of Sequim, the Clallam County, the OMC, and the SARC Board itself, we urge your support of this facility as a key economic development and recovery effort for the eastern part of Clallam County. All the key people, that even the ones that haven't had a part of this presentation, are here this morning. We are available to answer questions. We ask for your support and would like to answer any questions that you have. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Pickering. Before we go to the audience and before we deliberate, do you board members have any specific questions of Mr. Pickering regarding his presentation that you want clarified before we move on?
Yeah, in your presentation, you say the project cost is $731,000. And some change, you're asking for $760,000. And then on one of these handouts that I have, it says options selected by SARC, and it shows $580,000. And of course, the other options are not selected, so it seems like a pretty wide range of estimates, and I'm wondering which, I'm assuming we're just looking at the 760, and what's the difference?
Paul can help me with that, because some of that is direct cost, and some of that is some of the overhead that has to be added to it.
Let me, just for a second, did everybody hear the question? About the difference in the costs involved in 2 or 3 of the parts of the presentation. There were some differing numbers. He's asking to clarify those numbers to see how the final number came up. All right.
This is the final summary, by the way. Earlier ones were different.
Okay, well, what is this one that we just got, it was right here this morning? It's,
I'm not sure what that one was.
it says financial summary, options selected by SARC.
That may have been from our previous attempt to put in an application back in the spring, and it has been updated substantially since then.
Oh, so this is useless.
That one is available.
Well, we don't have a copy of that. Or at least I can't find it.
I can get it to Jennifer right away.
As clarification, correct me if I'm wrong, what I thought I understood was the application that came in was at 761.5.
Yes, ma'am.
But after fine tuning, you feel that this is more reflective
Yes, ma'am.
of what the total project is going to be. So that's the difference between these two figures. They've honed approximately $30,000.
Paul and I have spent more than a few hours on the phone together, honing the project.
Is that correct?
And it's important to bear in mind that this is still preliminary estimates for the cost of the project. We haven't embarked on a thorough investment grade engineering audit for the entire project yet. We have done an engineering assessment for the area, and we have a rough estimated budget to replace it.
But to speak to Joe's concern, to take that one step further, the total project cost, and I believe one of the ladies who spoke indicated it would be a firm fixed fee once it's established.
Yes, ma'am.
All
That's
right.
correct.
I'd like to clarify that this is the number that you're asking for at this point.
That is the number
It's
we're
a dollar
at
amount.
this point.
So,
And regardless of additional engineering or anything else, the number you're asking for is what the county commissioners would be considering, regardless of what any future costs might be in connection with this grant.
That is correct.
Correct?
Correct.
so that changes the number on the application.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Okay.
Go
Alan,
ahead.
No, the most important, to have the latest and best numbers that we have, and I did not have a chance to sit down with that with Jennifer.
point of process for the commissioners, and I don't know this, and I don't know if anybody's here who can answer it. Has this board ever put forward a proposal or recommendation for a not to exceed amount?
Not that I'm aware of, because we are responding to the application as it's submitted to us, making a recommendation based upon the request. The only latitude that we have, or have exercised, has to do with whether we're going to grant the money, whether a loan is appropriate, or whether a denial is appropriate. But we have not, to my knowledge, gone out and recommended another alternative to what's being asked for. So normally we respond to the application as it's submitted, or in this case, amended.
But we don't know of any reason why, if we decided to, we couldn't do that. A grant of 731, 705, not to exceed 765, pending final review.
I suppose we could. To me, I guess I'm thinking it would be an unnecessary step, because the commissioners are going to make the final call. They're going to look at the numbers, and they will put whatever criteria they want on those numbers once we recommend. So I don't know that we would achieve much by that. But it's an interesting question.
Yeah, okay. Thanks.
All right, any other questions? Yes.
This is page 11 of the application.
I had trouble trying to fit information into the form that I was given to do, so I apologize if it's a little confusing sometimes.
Okay, it says that 191,000 will be spent on local businesses in the county. And that's only 25% of the 760 in the original application then, so where will those other 75% of the funds be spent? If you're only going to spend about 25% of the budget on local contractors and businesses.
It is the air handler itself. That is a rather complicated, custom-built piece of equipment the size of a small motor home that is built under patents and other things. Either some of them have been built in Germany. Where are you looking at right now?
I believe these come out of the Midwest.
And a large amount of computer controls, computer systems, and computer software that has to come with it. If we could go to Peninsula Heat or airflow heating and get a system that would work, we would be delighted to do it because it would save us a lot of money. But designing a Natorium air handler system is not something for a heating and air conditioning company. The original system at SARC created such a rainstorm in the Natorium, we had to rip it out and put what is now the current system because it wasn't designed properly. And I don't know, Steve, the original system at William Shore, did it work reasonably well before you put the new system in?
No. Unless you wanted a rainforest.
So it is key to have something that is well engineered, and one of the reasons that I, as an engineer and as chair of the board, have been working closely with the Backus is because the extensive experience they have with a Natorium and designing a Natorium and a Natorium system, and working with the engineers who actually do the calculations and the work.
And these systems are very specifically engineered with the proper materials to withstand the harsh and rigorous conditions that are presented by pools. Where you have a lot of humidity, you have chlorine in the air, they're built to last.
All right, Orville?
I was just wondering if you had done any work on quantifying the energy savings for this project.
Yes, we have.
Do you have any
In terms of dollars?
numbers?
Dollars? Yeah, that's basically where this number comes from.
Oh, that's
presented.
That's the savings over what your past costs have been.
Correct.
That is an annual savings.
Yes.
Okay.
If I may ask Steve to jump into this, what was your savings? Because you have a much higher efficiency unit than we think we can get the money for. So what has your savings been, Steve?
We did a savings of about 55% over what our old system was. When we do our due diligence against Abacus, generally they estimate low so they can hit that target. So we were about 30% over what they estimated our savings to be. So that expense savings is the bottom number. You'll probably be 20% probably over that.
And to be fair, the existing air handler unit, despite its decrepit condition, it does have some heat recovery mechanisms inside. It's just a question of how long it's going to last.
We've had three major repairs that we've done in the last year just to keep it running. It did run yesterday because I ran it for a while.
So I'm still a bit confused. If that $17,000 is the annual savings, and you're saying that represents about 20% of the cost, if the system is, so say it's $100,000 is the cost, and if you get a 3 system or a 4 system, if you upgrade it, then that's $50,000 saving versus $17,000 or $20,000 savings. What's the difference in the cost of putting the more efficient system?
Well, the more elaborate.
Well, you said level 2 versus level 3 or level 4, but it looks to me like if you're going to save that much more money, how long would it take to pay that off?
Well, it's not entirely a direct comparison comparison between the William Shore Pool and SARC. They are different facilities, different buildings. And so I don't believe our initial estimates of savings were as high for options 3 and options 4 as they turned out to be for Steve's facility.
We would like to do that. The primary purpose of the air handler was to make, we can't run the facility without it. Yes, we're trying to design it for energy efficiency. We've been working with Lisa and Paul and others to make sure it is energy efficient. The water and waste system part of this project would be primarily energy and water savings, which are very important. What we have left out in this proposal is perhaps, if you looked at the SARC facility, the roof right over the natatorium is an ideal place to put solar. However, you put a calculator to it, it does not pencil out at all. Whereas the air handler is simply required to operate, and we're trying to add some additional efficiency and at the same time as we replace the system.
Any further questions? Yeah, Bill.
I have a question on the budget. And looking over the last few years of performance, the SARC facility has lost money almost every year.
Yeah.
Quite a bit. And to make this budget work, you put in what it looks to me like a bunch of pie in the sky increases in revenue, because this air handling system is not going to increase revenue. Not at all.
Other than it's either zero or in, one or the other.
If you are going to project $240,000 in increased revenue, why did the board wait till they were absolutely flat broke before they even thought of doing things to increase revenue? Because this air system is not going to help that. And I don't understand how you're going to get $100,000 in contributions that you didn't have before. You know, how you're going to increase membership dues by $178,000. How you're going to increase all these numbers when you couldn't do it in the last 5 years.
Let me address that in several parts. I'll address the first part as chair of the board of SARC. The SARC board, we are a public parks and recreation district, junior taxing district. We have not had any tax revenue, property tax revenue for 13 years. We had built up, unfortunately, a surplus of almost $2 million at one point. We should have cut the tax rate back then. 2.5 years ago, the board voted to go for a levy, a 12-cent levy, which would have paid not only for the difference between the operating cost and the expense of running the facility, but would have provided capital money over the 6-year period to do a lot of the repairs that we're talking about now. No public facility, public pool type facility that I'm aware of, and I think Steve, who backed me up on this, runs without public or donation support. In other words, our 80% coverage that we ran at SARC was the best that we're aware of anywhere in this state. In other words, most pools run, I know that the city of Seattle pools made 30 cents of every dollar they spent on that pool came from fees. At SARC, 80 cents of every dollar that was spent on operations came from fees. 20 cents was coming from past reserves. And we failed the first levy. We almost made it. Same as the school district, 57.5%. At that point, we looked at a different way of doing it. And we had a petition drive for a petition-based municipal parks district. And the voters decided that they didn't like an elected board, and that proposal was defeated. At that point, we had no choice. We tried to reduce hours, reduce expenses, but our past sales collapsed. And instead of getting $100,000, $120,000 a month that we were getting in past sales, they went down to $30,000 a month. At that point, the board acted and temporarily suspended the facility. About 2 days later, I got an email from Gary Huff of the YMCA. Gary, would you like to address the contributions and revenue portion? Okay, and I see you bringing Glenn with him because that's the budget.
That is our CEO, our staff person. It isn't pie in the sky. $100,000 contribution level. Here in Port Angeles, we raise $130,000 a year in contributions to cover people that can't afford the full cost. And that's what that is in this budget. That's what that is in Squint. And we base that on a variety of things. One is the study itself found that 30% of the people surveyed said they would donate. That's one. Two, I spoke with 45 potential donors in Squim myself. My position at the Y, I'm a volunteer board member, but my position is fundraising. I'm the chair of the fundraising committee. But anyway, so I spoke with 42 potential donors myself and got a pretty good idea of what we could possibly do. We have some $5,000, some $10,000, some $1,000, a variety of 500s that people are saying if this happens, they would do this. They would, because they want to keep SARC, the YMCA at SARC open. It's also based on the fact that 130 people actually gave money to the campaign. They raised about right around $40,000 for the campaign. So we have that list of people, and those are people I've talked to. And one final thing is 7,400 people actually voted for the levy and said they would give, through their taxes, a certain amount of money each year. So there's a variety of reasons why we believe, based on the YMCA's way of working, that we can raise that $100,000. Len can speak to some of the couple of the other things, but it's definitely not pie in the sky because we are betting the farm on this project, and it can't be pie in the sky. We can't lose. We can't afford to lose. So
the other thing we have access to as a nonprofit charity, that's our tax status, is we can solicit grant funding as well. We often do that for targeted programs. And we haven't included that in there, but that's another option for us. The other thing that's in this preliminary budget is, of course, the contract rental with OMC. And that's sort of a baseline start, and they are very excited about expanding programs with the YMCA in this facility. It's very possible that we would actually expand the facility and even increase that amount over time. So we're pretty confident that we can make this happen. We probably have a little bit different cost structure, particularly on staffing, than was in place at the time. We've modeled that based on YMCA pool experiences in other communities. So there's a few things we don't know yet for sure, but we're trying to detail that out as we move forward.
Sherry had some economic data from Commissioner McIntyre that I'd like to share too.
Yeah, in supporting the underlying assumptions on revenue, there is some good economic news out there. From the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, Clallam County, per capita personal income has finally started rising last year and is now above the previous highs set in 2008 before the economic downturn. This indicates both in present value numbers and in the weighted for inflation and cost of living terms that individuals have more disposable income available to them and will start to move from savings to spending. This supports the survey numbers in the number of non-SARC pass holders who indicated that they would likely join the SARC-Y and would themselves donate.
does that help your question?
Not really, because none of the things you're talking about are controlled by whether or not we get a new air handling system. If you had a viable facility and needed a new air handling system, it would be much more palatable to me than to put this in and hope it's going to get these guys to contribute. You're doing it backwards. You got to make the facility, it's not broke. It runs every day, and it will run.
It can run.
It can run.
The facility is shut down right now.
I understand that, but you're doing it backwards. You got to show me. We did this for the city of Forks. few years ago. Their pool was having a problem. So this group gave them a loan, and ultimately the county wrote it off because they did not get paid back. But they said they were going to pay it back, but they didn't do it. And to me, you have to prove you're going to make this thing work before I would be real excited about spending. We could have a really nice air handling system and still no facility if you don't figure out how to get the revenue here.
Yeah.
And it is still pie in the sky until you got the check in. It's always about the money.
Well, it's always, in any business endeavor, there is always guesses. And in raising money, there's always guesses, but we have a long history of doing it. We do it here, we do it in Port
We got
Townsend.
a long history of losing money too.
No, we don't, I'm sorry, not the Y, I'm the
Not the
YMCA.
why. This does.
SARC was never, ever designed to make money. That's not the purpose of the state law for a Parks and Recreation District. The fact that we were able to cover 80% of our operating expenses with fees is the best in the state. Steve, what do you cover at William Shore? A very viable position. 55, so we were operating better than what they, and until we cut the hours and knew that we no longer had the reserves to operate the facility, we were operating very comfortably. We hit that 80% every single year. So it's not something that the system failed. The fact that the voters would not provide money for the difference between the operating a park and the expense of operating it.
Can I make one final point to your question and your point? It isn't just raising money either. We are putting together contracts with Olympic Medical Center. They're going to pay us $60,000 a year that didn't come in before. The city of Sequim is going to pay, and there's a contract, $30,000 a year that didn't come in before. The school district is part of this, and they're going to be paying a certain amount for the services provided. So in other words, we're going to have contracts also that include, so we're going to raise a certain amount, we're going to have contracts for a certain amount. That's what covers the gap. And it's not all hoping we can raise it. It's a combination of a variety of things. I don't know if that helps, but contracts speak to me.
Any further questions by the board specifically on the presentation for now? Orville?
I just wanted to raise an issue, it's a mundane one, but important. You've been dealing with corrosion in a high humidity environment. And are you doing anything in this new facility to take care of the corrosion problem?
Okay, well, unfortunately or unfortunately, I spent 30 years in the composites industry, both in research and development and management and some selling. I'm a composites engineer, composites manager. And composites is all about corrosion, so I've been dealing with corrosion for years. Now, this system was engineered with painting and so forth, and I asked Paul to discuss a little bit about materials that he would be specifying in terms of the system, and I'd ask Steve to address any corrosion. How long's your system been running now?
3 years.
And corrosion issues?
It's all about humidity. If you keep humidity down, your corrosion goes down.
Paul, comment or two?
That's correct. The big issue, of course, with pools is what we call chloramines. In other words, that's the chloramine smell that you get when you walk in. And Steve's right. By implementing a new system, you keep the humidity down and you keep those chloramines suppressed as well. With the new air handling systems, the old one was old technology from the 1980s. It was a painted air handler inside and out. Over time, it would not stand up to the kind of conditions that are present with pools. With these new systems, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but with the new air handler you have at the William Shore pool, it's stainless steel exterior, you've got a lot of stainless steel interior, and then all your surfaces that are coming into contact with the pool air are aluminum, if I recall correctly, so that they're fundamentally resistant to that, so there is no corrosion with that. As far as the actual pool environment itself, part of this project will involve addressing airflow distribution in the pool to improve airflow distribution so that we scrub the humidity, any condensation off those surfaces, off the roof and off the walls to clear that out and process it through the air handler.
Okay, one more question, and then we're going to take a brief break before we have public input. Dan?
Frank, you had mentioned that you tried to run a municipal park district proposal that failed. Did you mean metropolitan?
Yes, Metropolitan, MPD.
Yeah,
Metropolitan Park District.
because there is a difference, and I just wanted to point out too that the Quilly Valley Park and Recreation District, which Bill has referred to here, is just like SARC, set up like the Swim Park and Recreation District. I would recommend any community in the state that wants to look at these type of proposals, look at the metropolitan district formulation. We don't have any government agencies other than these that operate. I mean, we got weed districts out there that are collecting taxes to pay for themselves, Bill. We have fire districts that we pay taxes to. They provide a very great service to our community. I think these pools, Forks is operating, not as we proposed, but it is functioning. People are learning to swim. It's a private contract. I was part of the group that put that proposal together in purchasing the Forest Service land adjacent to where the pool was built. 4 ball fields and things, and there were 4 rental houses on there that were to pay for the loan repayment to the county. When you go back to the taxpayers year after year after year and ask them for a levy and they continually say no, it's really difficult to make these things function. Why we have this system where we have park and recreation districts with no taxing authority at all.
Well, we had taxing authority, we just had to ask the voters to approve the tax.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and it's real easy, especially in the times we've had over the past nearly 10 years now, for people to say no. And I'm just trying to say it's hard for any governmental entity to function without some baseline level of taxes. I think the YMCA and SARC association and contracts are ideal. We couldn't quite get the YMCA interested in Forks. Much smaller community, of course. But I just wanted to ask that question on municipal versus metropolitan and point out the differences and some of the issues that have faced the Forks community as well as SARC.
Thank you. We looked at the MPD obvious concept. We chose, relations have not always been great between the city of Sequim and Clallam County. I talked to Candace Pratt, the mayor, at the last board meeting, and we agreed many of the problems we've had in the past have now been overcome, particularly with coming in of Charlie Bush, and also perhaps with Mark Rosias coming on to the county commission board. Obviously, an MPD where a cooperative entity such as William Shore is between the county commissioners and the city is a viable option, and they have the authority to raise the tax themselves. We as commissioners of a Park and Rec junior taxing district can only recommend. SARC did have levy money for many of the, we have 28 years experience of running this facility. We had levy money for quite a bit of that time. But as Sherry pointed out, in the economic downturn, it became very difficult to pass a levy. Look at the mess our schools are in right now, trying to pass a school levy, which is even more critical. So I can contend that SARC has proven a success, but is not able to get the tax money, and that's why working with Y is the proposal that we're working with today.
Okay, we're going to have a lot of...
One quick question.
Okay.
As part of the incoming revenue, are you anticipating a review of the membership fee structure?
I'm gonna let Lynn.
Lynn had to just leave. This is Randy Johnson, I'm on board. Yes, the fee membership was put together when everyone who was involved in the study looked at what people were willing to pay at different levels. And we took the kind of modest sort of level to be safe when we were looking at the proposal for revenue. And that was what was used. So obviously there'll be a whole new fee structure when the Y comes forward with that, providing it gets approved. So
I would also say that my wife and I are joining the private gym because we got to do some exercise. We're paying more now than we used to, and I think more than what the Y is going to be. So.
All right, at this point, before we have public input, I've learned that in terms of endurance, we should probably take a 5-minute break, and then we'll open it to comments that you might want to make. So let's be back here by 1:45, and we will reconvene. Thank you.
I never seen you say all that down.
Do we have everybody? I think most of you are here.
We lost quite a few.
All right, welcome back. Pardon me for standing in front, but welcome back, everybody. Appreciate it. This is the part in our meeting where you get a chance to weigh in. I need to give you a little bit in the way of ground rules. Sorry, I couldn't see you through the column there, so I thought I'd say hello. First of all, if you can keep your comments to 5 minutes or less, hopefully less, because we're running a little bit long and we would like to kind of stay on point and move this along because I know some have some other appointments. So we want to give it a fair airing, but we want to be sure we stay on point. Secondly, if you choose to speak, would you first stand up and project, and we need your name and your address and the position that you're speaking from. You're a commissioner, interested citizen, SARC board member, whatever, wherever you're coming from in terms of your comment, if you would mention that very briefly. Name, address, and where you're coming from on it. And keep them under 5 minutes, please. And I haven't gotten any to be read into record that were in writing, so I think we're good to go there. So with this point, I'll open it up to the public here. Anyone? Kelly?
So my name's Kelly Johnson, and my address is at the next thing, 1442 Freshwater Bay Road, Port Angeles, Washington, 98363. I am here on behalf of the YMCA board member. And I would just like to address some concerns that you had, Bill. I'm also in real estate and sell real estate in Port Angeles and Sequim, and I would second that people, when they come to the area, they are looking at our schools, our pools, our libraries, and hospitals and services when they come here. So I think it's important for that. But also, as a Y board member, this money for the air handler is critical to our success and to our moving forward, because I think that a piece of the puzzle, we don't want to lease a building that has an air handler that's on at the end of its life, and that we have a $760,000 or $731 bill hanging over our head, because we do not have that money and we will not be successful. So I think it's critical for us moving forward to have this air handler taken care of by SARC.
May I address that, Alan, as well?
We need to move it along, though.
Very quickly.
Okay, very quickly.
The air handler is either yes or no. It either operates, the facility operates. If the air handler goes down, particularly in the wintertime, we shut down. It takes 3 to 6 months to engineer and design and put a new one in, with the facility not operating and no revenue.
Thank you. Other comments? Yes, sir.
Yes, good afternoon, board. My name's Joe Irvin. I work for the city of Sequim. The address is 152 West Cedar Street. I'm the assistant to the city manager and parks manager. We've been intimately involved in the issue of the air handler request. Our city council this last Monday made two positive and unanimous motions, as Mr. Pickering pointed out. One was to support a operational plan to engage in a contract with the YMCA for $30,000 annually for a 3-year period. What motion was approved unanimously, contingent on the request for $760,000 coming through county opportunity funds to help pay for this new air handler unit. It's very important to the city of Sequim that we find a way to reopen SARC. As Mr. Pickering also pointed out, there's a lot of jobs at stake in our community. It helps with real estate purchases, bringing in professionals to the Sequim community, and we have definitely worked with SARC and the YMCA to bring this proposal to this point, and we would like to see a positive motion move forward to the Clallam County Board of Commissioners.
Thank you, sir. Also, we would note that that number is 731,705 by amended application as presented, so we're all reading off the same sheet of music. Other comments, questions? Yes, Randy.
Yeah, thank you, Alan. I'm here today speaking on my own personal behalf, although I am on the YMCA board. I want everyone to be aware of that. First of all, I came somewhat like Bill, kind of wondering because of the financial condition of SARC at the time, not having been involved in the ins and outs of what had happened. And I'm still not totally sure, although I have a lot better idea than when I began. The subjects too, from being on the Y board that I had personally, and again it's the Y board that has to ultimately decide, is there a viable funding source from the current members and potential new members that we have in the area? And that of course had to come from that study. And again, I think as Gary had addressed, I think they were actually very conservative. I've got to tell you, I look at our Y budget every month to make sure that we're viable and that we fund it, and I know what kind of people we get in and what the rates are being charged and everything else, and so did it match that? And yes, it absolutely did. So that's a big part of the funding. The other things that make this go, in my mind, that are very important, of course, were Olympic Memorial. If they weren't on board to help fund part of this and certainly have programs that kind of fit with the Y, that would have been a real big issue. Eric Lewis and that whole group have stepped forward, and I think that's extremely important. Right behind that's the city of Sequim. We wanted to know that they were certainly on board when we went forward. That was an important thing. And again, I wanted to look at all this, and all these things had to be in order, or else I'd said, oh, maybe we have an issue. Right behind that, we have the school system, and then we have major capital costs. As Gary had said, we've already been out to try to raise money, including with our company, to help fund part of this. And we said, yeah, we do that, providing certain things took place. But I'll tell you, if these other things don't take place, then I'm certainly not going to fund it from my company standpoint. And as far as the greater benefit, besides obviously health, which is an extremely important thing, I will tell you it's very important to direct people to this area, to have good facilities like this, or else it's a real negative, I would tell you. That plus the school system, I've got to say both of those things. So anyway, those are my comments. Thank you.
For the record, would you mind stating your name and address?
Oh, Randy Johnson, 123 Henry Boyd Road. Sorry.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Other comments? Yes, ma'am.
Yes. My name is Penny Van Vliet, and I live at 117C Hilltop Drive in Sequim. My husband, Jack, and I moved to Clallam County almost 9 years ago, and one of the first things we did after we unpacked was we went out and found SARC and we joined. And it has been an extremely important part of our life, both the pool, the exercise. In my former life, I coordinated trade shows for Forward Wisconsin, the state's public-private economic development agency. We set up booths at various trade shows around the country to tout the advantages of our state and our communities for their business expansion plans. Our communities and their economic development councils were acutely aware that businesses base their location decisions on a number of issues, and the social amenities, such as SARC, were and are of great significance to the employees. You have heard this from the OFC, from the governments on Clallam County, and also the county. All of them at one time or another look for qualified people here and from other parts of the country. We are fortunate to have the natural amenities in our area, the water, the mountains, and plentiful sunshine. Not quite today. But even the people who hike, bike, walk, kayak, sail, or any of the other recreational activities that are available here, they also need what SARC has provided, because if you aren't fit, you aren't going to be able to do all these other things. I was so pleased that the Sequim City Council voted to support SARC and feel confident that the Sequim School District and OMC will do the same, as SARC provides the facilities that both the students and the medical patients need. As members of the Clallam County Fund Advisory Board, you surely realize the benefits of this facility to our county and its importance in the county's economic development endeavors to attract businesses and their employees to our area. I ask that you favorably consider funding the SARC request. I miss it so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Van Vliet, and there it is on the. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
My name is Jim Anderson. I'm a citizen of Clallam County. I live at 721 Clark Road. And I just want to tell the county that your responsibility to me as a citizen of this county is to act in my best interest. And I believe that's reopening SARCs. And I trust you and I pay my taxes to you on that basis that you will act in my best interest. Our county supports marinas, golf courses in the public or private sector, casinos, everything else. But I can't understand why we can't. This is really a basically small facility compared to the casinos and golf courses and John Wayne Marina and all that, and it can't not be supported. I cannot understand this. And I'll be very disappointed if the county doesn't act in my best interest. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. All right, any final comments? Yes, sir.
My name is Jan Richardson. I'm a commissioner. I live at 670 Keeler in Sequim. I'm commissioner of SARC. I have one question. Who's going to benefit from this request? The public or private companies? That's the question. 540, very first line, very first paragraph, for public use, not for private use. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other comments? All right then, thank you so much. I appreciate that. At this point, we will close the public hearing portion of our meeting today and convene deliberations by the board. You're all welcome to stay. At this point, board members have an opportunity to have any questions, concerns, or comments that you want to share with one another. Frank is here who can respond to any questions or issues and has the opportunity to summarize or rebut anything that he feels is appropriate at this point. And then we will entertain a motion one way or the other once we have done that. So I open it up to my fellow board members. Questions, comments, issues of us, of one another, or Mr. Picker? Orville?
Go ahead.
Well, I just, my comment has to do with, first of all, I'm impressed with the presentations that have been made here today. Somebody has, or a lot of folks have done an awful lot of work in putting this all together, and that's very much appreciated. I guess my thought comes down to, there are perhaps some risks down the road for SARC to hopefully be able to handle. It seems to me that the first order of business is to settle the issue of the facility itself, because without the facility, there's no point in doing anything else. So I think favorably of this expenditure and this investment, and will support it.
Thank you, Orville. Sharon, you got a comment, question?
I just wanted to make a couple of points. I think Bill's concerns, I understand those concerns. However, I think we're at a crossroads here where anyone and everyone, I think, will acknowledge, in fact, it was on the background sheet, the board has acknowledged that they made judgment decisions that probably were not the best in the interest of SARC overall. That's in the past. I'm very happy to see that OMC, the city, and other entities are on board. Would have been nice if they'd been on board in the past. But they are now. The Y is obviously looking to bring a new level of experienced management to the fore. I looked at the preliminary operating budget. There are several things that I see significant cuts to that obviously enhance the bottom line. Looking at the, first of all, I don't think the Forks Pool is a apples and apples thing. I think that if we were to look at any of the loans that this group has made over the years, the majority of them have been forgiven. So that, I think, is a moot issue. The other thing that I think is critical is I don't think the comment pie in the sky works, because, quite frankly, this is an ongoing operation that speaks on so many levels. It's not just the kids, it's not just the health, it's not just the real estate, it's just not the quality of life. It is all of those things so completely interwoven. And if we put that kind of support for a program, and the equipment does have to come first, in this case, because of the situation we're looking at, to me, it is a much better use of opportunity fund money than, at the risk of making an unpopular comment, putting forth millions of dollars to flush entities to enhance their rental properties for a program that may or may not take place. This is a program that is able, with the replacement of this equipment, to move forward, to expand. The contracts do speak. You now have OMC ready to step up, you have the city ready to step up, you have the schools looking at it. I think for the first time in its 28-year history, SARC is positioned to really come into the 21st century. And I fully endorse this program, and I hope that the fellow commissioners will vote for it with me.
Thank you, Sharon. Other comments, questions, or issues by any other board member at this point?
Do you have anything, Bill?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Well, I guess I'll take the last shot at it, and it is just back to Forks and that facility, and I think if we had to do it over again, we would have asked for grant money the whole way instead of trying to make a portion of the funding alone. I'm not sure that the state legislature had this type of a program in their mind when they set aside the 0.8% to go to the counties for economic development. On the other hand, I think quality of life, real estate market, attracting other businesses to move to our county, this helps do that. And it makes a good, strong community on the east end. And with that in mind, I'd like to make the motion that we recommend to the county commissioners to approve this proposal.
Could you state for in the amount of?
731.
705.
Round the numbers, please.
All right, thank you. Do we have a second?
I will second.
Second for Sharon. All right. If you have no other questions of Frank, we don't really need a comment at this point, unless we can discuss this. If you'd like to say something, please do.
I'd like to say something. It is the mission that SARC has had in the past is to provide services for the whole community. When Gary contacted me and said that this YMCA was interested, I looked at the mission of the YMCA, a nonprofit organization. They don't make any money out of this. And their mission is the same. They want to serve the citizens of this area. And I think that's what makes this partnership, along with OMC and the others, the most viable approach that we know of today. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Right. Thank you for your presentation. All right, further discussion. We have a motion on the table to recommend to the county commissioners that they approve this application in the amount of $731,705. Further discussion. All right, seeing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion on the table say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The application for $731,705 for SARC is hereby, the motion to recommend approval to the county commissioners is hereby approved. Keep in mind the county commissioners will take it up at a future meeting, so you might want to plan to be there and weigh in as necessary because they have the bottom line. I want to thank you all for coming today, and I'd like to wish you all a Merry Christmas. Have a good holiday season. Thank you, everyone. 16 for undesignated projects, which is where this request, if approved, would be paid out of. As of right now, we have $1,466,135 in cash balance, and expect another $950,000 or so to come in next year. Starting in 2017 and for the next 15 years, ending in 2032, the Opportunity Fund will be required to make a payment of approximately $725,000 per year on the loan to build the Carlsberg sewer collection system. And for the next 7 years, $48,194 per year for the loan on the Business Incubator Project. Assuming nothing else changes, we should have about $182,000 per year available to allocate towards new requests, and this is in the future. The point being here that we have approaching $1.5 million in the fund now that is available and could be allocated towards this application if the county deems it appropriate, and if we deem it appropriate to recommend approval of the application. Does that help? All okay with that? All right then. Okay, at this point, I want to go back to Bill to see if there's anything further you wanted to add to the administrative criteria for moving this forward, and if there's any recommendation that you would wish to put on the table at this time.
We don't have anything further to add, and our position at the EDC is to ensure that it's a suitable project to bring before the board to make a decision as to whether it should go before the county commissioners. So but we've reviewed it for against the statutes I mentioned, and feel it should be here today.
All right then. At this point, I'd like to ask Frank Pickering to come forward, and it's time for the presentation to the board. May I remind you again, if you would please speak to the last person in the room so that everybody is aboard.
I have my own hearing aids on too.
There you go.
And I have a hearing problem.
Then you have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much. My name is Frank Pickering, and I am the chair of the SARC, or Clallam County Parks and Recreation District Board, Parks and Recreation District number 1 Board, better known as SARC. And I'd also like to introduce Sherry Nagel, who is our vice chair and will be having part of this presentation. And also Len Borchers, who is the What is your title now, Lance? You changed it.
Acting director.
Okay. Of the YMCA, whom we are looking at partnering with in order to bring the facility.
Stand, please, appreciate it.
Sure. Let me- Do I have to come up there? Can I just-
No, come on up, that's fine.
Frank told me he was inviting me to a very small informal meeting. He didn't say anything about all this. So my name's Gail Sumter. I was the aquatics manager at SARC for about 1.5 to 2 years. As far as the jobs go, I supervised all the lifeguard staff. That included the cashier staff and the supervisor staff. Cashiers and supervisors had to also be lifeguard certified, and that's where we drew our supervisory staff from. They started at age 15, and the majority of them were between 15 and about 19, 20. To be honest with you, unless they were, I had some local moms and people trying to have a part-time job to supplement family income. But for the most part, I told these kids I didn't want them there after 20. I wanted them to go to college and go away and do something else, because it's not a permanent job. But the important thing about this job was it taught them skills in terms of the obvious lifeguarding, first aid, skills that they could take other places. But it also taught them how to have their first job. And a lot of my training for them was training them to have a job. Because when you're 15 and 16 years old and you haven't had a job yet, you need to learn how to interact with your supervisors, interact with other staff, work as a team, and some of the very basic things that you don't think about, like I'd hand them their tax statement at the end of the year and they'd look at me and say, what does this mean? Do I get more money? Do I have to pay this? What are we doing? So I trained them about how to have workplace etiquette and skills. They took those skills, and I think they've taken them beyond SARC into their community, beyond SARC in time to their future positions. And I can tell you about one or two that took their skills. One kid did CPR on an airline flight for 45 minutes when somebody passed out and had a heart attack. And I've had them make rescues at the lakes around here as they were guarding outside of SARC. So yeah, it's a huge job incubator, if you will. That's the way I looked at it. So.
Thank you. Some of us call her Mama Gail, but she does. The lifeguards do behave. Other local primary jobs, as I call them, there will be jobs for local businesses in construction during the installation of the air handler and the water and waste systems that we are proposing. This will involve concrete work, electrical work, plumbing work, computer controls, cranes, heavy construction, and probably several others that I'm not thinking about. I'm looking at the engineer who knows what all this is about. But I think key to everything is what I'm calling the secondary job impacts. The fact that this facility doesn't exist now and will hopefully exist in the future.
Are you all set? You good to go?
Thank you for asking.
All right, then, good morning, everybody. My name is Alan Barnard. I'm the chair of the Opportunity Fund Board. The board members here will have a roll call shortly where you'll find out the areas that each member represents. I represent District 2. Welcome, everyone. We appreciate it. A couple of things before we get any further into this. First of all, may I ask that you all either turn your cell phones off or put them on vibrate, and kindly ask that any of the board members, we don't take any calls during the conduct of this so that we don't miss anything. So if you would do that, I'd appreciate it. All right, secondly, because I'm hard of hearing and others of you might be hard of hearing, for the board members and for you, the public, you will have a time to speak later on if you have something you'd like to say. And the board members will be asking questions. If you would all kindly project to the last person in the room so that everybody in here hears all the comments. Our back is turned for 3 of you here, so Connie, when you make your comments, turn sideways and project so that everybody in the far end of the room will hear your comments and questions. Fair enough? All right, thank you so much. We'll proceed at this point and ask Bill Greenwood to perform the roll call, please.
Right, I'd like to ask each member, starting with Sharon, to announce who they are and who they represent.
I'm Sharon Delabar. I represent the city of Sequim.
Dan Lyman, City of Forks.
Joe Murray, Clallam County District 3.
Orville Campbell, who represent the city of Port Angeles.
Bill Herman, Port of Port Angeles.
And you know me. All right, thank you, Bill. Appreciate that. Then we have a quorum, so we're clear to move ahead. We need to do a little administrative thing before we get into the substance here, having to do with the minutes of our last meeting. So the first question I have is, did you all get a copy of the minutes from our last meeting, which was held, when was that? I don't have
July
that.
23rd. July 23rd.
July 23rd. Does everybody have a copy? All right, then I would entertain a motion.
I move that we accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
Second. All right, thank you. Any discussion on the minutes of the previous meeting? And there's a motion on the table that we accept those minutes as submitted. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Minutes of the previous meeting are accepted. All right, at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Bill Greenwood. The Economic Development Corporation has the function of screening applications and providing administrative support. And I'd like to ask Bill to cover those.
Back online. If I could, Jennifer, is there a way to turn out the forward lights? I hope you can see everything. All right. The first thing is, what is an air handler?
If you stand there, I can't get any of your pictures.
Okay. At some point, I got to repeat my
Okay.
notes too. What is an air handler? That's what this is right here. This is the old one. It's about 20 years old now. You can see a lot of the rust on it and so forth. It is required by the state health code that a natorium have an operating air handler to exhaust the air in the building and keep it a certain level of humidity and other chemicals in there. It does heat the natorium, and this one with propane burners. It does remove contaminants. It recovers heat. It's not like you can open a window in the middle of the winter and expect to ventilate out and keep this going. It does a lot of heat recovery, and that's where a lot of the money goes in the cost of these things. And it does provide an efficiency, and that's one of the key things we look at in the cost of the system. Two key components. As you can see, it's quite rusted. These are 2 propane burners. They provide all the heat for the natorium. They are quite old. If any of you are familiar with gas-fired furnaces, the flue gas goes up through a plenum, and if there's any holes in that, it can be very dangerous. So we're monitoring carbon monoxide with these, and we really need to get this replaced. This is one of the 2 blowers that either brings in fresh air or removes air from the system. This is one that has had some problems. We have problems with bearings. These run all the time. Problems with belts, etc. It is a maintenance. I won't call it a nightmare, but it does require a fair number of labor hours to keep the current system repaired. I don't show a slide of the computer system. It's still running XT. It has boards in it that we don't want to think about. And it is one of our problem areas right now. It is running. I started it up the other day and ran it for a few minutes. But it is something that is going to go out and will continue to go out. Okay, that's one of the key subjects, the air handler itself. It's all about jobs. When SARC closed, we lost about 70-something jobs in the Sequim area. With the proposal that we are going to be putting forth, in cooperation with the YMCA, we anticipate a payroll recovery about $500,000 a year. We recover approximately 45 to 55 full and part-time jobs. This is going to be key. And a majority of the hires are for part-time youth as lifeguards. At this point, I'd like to ask one of our other members in the audience here, Gail Sumner, to tell us, she's the lady that has run the aquatics for years. Tell us a little bit about our lifeguards and the training that they get, the job training that they get.
And the few areas that he needs to do before we get into the substance of the application.
Well, I'd first like to go around the table, again, starting with Sharon, and make sure you have to announce if you have a conflict of interest on this matter or not.
No conflict.
No conflict.
Dan?
No conflict. No conflict.
No conflict. No conflict.
All right, thank you very much. So you all know, under section 5.40.060 of the responsibilities of the Opportunity Fund Board, this is from the county. In order to suitably come before this board, the applicant needs to meet 5 different criteria, and it's the job of our team to review those criteria against the application and to make sure it meets them. Sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. In this case, these are the criteria. Does it promote the ongoing operation of a business? In this instance, we believe it essentially does. Does it promote the expansion of an existing business? We would say it essentially does. Will it attract new businesses to the county, city? We believe it certainly would. Would it assist in the development of new businesses from within the incorporated and unincorporated areas of Clallam County? We believe that is the case. And would it provide family wage jobs to citizens of the county? And we believe that is the case as well after reviewing the application. So when that occurred, we then submitted it to the Opportunity Fund Board and called for the meeting.
All right, thank you, Bill. Appreciate that. At this time, I will call the public meeting to order and have a couple of initial comments I need to make. First of all, you will be given an opportunity in the public to weigh in on this after a while. If you have a written comment that you'd prefer not to present, but you would like to submit it for the record, and we'd like you to forward that comment up here. I will give them to Jennifer, and when it comes to that time, she could read the comment into the record so that everybody's heard. So if you have anything in writing, you can move it all the way up here, and we'll get it to Jennifer. All right, the second thing, we have received a very detailed analysis of the status of the Opportunity Fund. But I asked Jim if he could sort of cut to the chase and outline for us the status of the monies for our purposes of deliberation today. It's one paragraph, so I'm going to read it to you. We have $1 million budgeted for 2016.